وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
I know we khatam Quran, but it's not khatam Ramadan. Because what happened a lot of times when we finish the Quran, we kind of tend to get a bit lax, and our energy levels start withering. But there is no celebration until the last moment. We don't know that Allah could forgive us in the last minute of Ramadan. So just don't start celebrating yet. You know, because we tend to get into this celebratory mode, and we start to lose the focus of what Ramadan is, especially the nights. Like last night, we should have gotten some sort of hours out of it, because we don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive us the last moment. And you know, we have seen images coming out from all over the world of the Muslims flocking the masajid throughout the world. I don't know if you guys saw the image came out of Masjid Al-Aqsa on the 27th night. It was like about 250,000 people. It's like 250,000 people in Masjid Al-Aqsa on 27th night. The image came out of the Haram. The Haram was jam-packed. There were no space for people. And why we go so far? I mean, in our own community, all the masajid was completely packed, jam-packed. And it shows that the ummah is alive and kicking. We may have issues, but and we have problems, but it doesn't mean that we are dead. This ummah is still alive, and as one scholar said, you know, he went to visit another big scholar, and he said when he went, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he went to visit him, and he was actually kneeling down, and his head was on the ground. He was making sajda, and he was crying, he was sobbing. So he started to cry too when he saw him. And so Imam Sufyan al-Thawri saw, you know, he heard the song, he got up and he says, "Why are you crying?" He said, "I'm crying because I see your position and I figure it's something of great importance." And then he said to Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, he says, "What is the biggest challenge that we have?" And he said, "The biggest challenge is that when you lose hope that Allah will forgive you. That the forgiveness of Allah is always there. And it's a big problem when you start losing hope for Allah forgiving you." So it is very important, you know, that Ramadan is, we are winding down. We have few hours, but Allah has blessed us with the opportunity to be alive and to experience this special blessing. And you know, there's one particular scholar in Egypt, a scholar from among the greatest of Imam Shafi's fiqh, and Ibn Mu'akkid, and he said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Imam Ibn Mu'akkid was actually also the teacher of great scholars, and like Ibn Hajar, the author of Fath al-Bari. And he said that he mentioned that Laylatul Qadr would always remain, and it would remain until the end of time. It doesn't matter how bad we are and how terrible we become as an ummah, Laylatul Qadr will always be there until the end. And this is the mercy of Allah only. Can you imagine that as an ummah, we may be messing up, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still is very relenting to us. And we have the opportunity, if we do it right, to walk out of this month with a lifetime of barakah, lifetime of barakah. And if we mess it up, it is only our fault. But I just want to mention that to us to understand the mercy and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What I want to talk about, not necessarily that, but you know, anytime we are in a community, the seerah of the Prophet is always an important, alayhi salam, methodology of being able to follow that particular system that he went through. And you know, like I always refer, when I see a community, how would the Prophet ﷺ look at that particular community and how we take the lessons of growth. You know, I mean, look at yourself here, right? I mean, you just formed this community. This is like you being in the house of Arqam bin Arqam, a small compartment, learning Islam, trying to come together with a very diverse community. The most diverse community is the community of the Prophet ﷺ. Most diverse, right? You had people from Abyssinia, Rumi, you have people from Persia, Salman al-Farsi from Persia. You have people from all parts of the world, because they were taken as slaves into the Arabian Peninsula. And so when the Prophet came in Mecca, he met a very diverse community. And so there are lots of issues with diverse community. How do you navigate those? And how are you able to understand? And then in our particular situation, where we have diverse views and diverse following, you may have people from the Hanafi or Shafi'i, Hanbali, Maliki. How do you relate to each other as brothers? Which is very, very important. At one particular time, there were 4 different imams in the Haram. The Maliki will pray only behind Maliki, Shafi'i behind a Shafi'i imam, Hanafi behind a Hanafi imam, which is, was something historically factual. But we grow from that, we learn. All of these imam embracing Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, right? There may be some differences here and there, but we should respect each other. At one time in history, there were no intermarriages between Hanafi and a Shafi'i. It was that bad. How do we deal with that at this time? You know, how we relate with each other. I'm looking into this room here and I see so much diverse situation, and we should not allow this to hurt us. Because if we start thinking like this, you see, sometimes we look at something, we do not see the broader concept of it. We just only take it in the confines, and we feel that my view is the only view. And we do not respect each other's position, right? Whether it's Imam Abu Hanifa rahimullah, and these scholars respect each other, right? These scholars respect each other. Among them, like they used to travel into different territories which had following of different people, right? When a scholar move into another territory, like for example, they will go into an area and they lead the salah and they follow the tariqah of that particular imam. Just not to create a kind of what you call eyebrows raising or differences. And sometimes the students of these scholars feel, hey, what happened? You changed your view? No, I did not change my view. But out of respect, right? We know a particular school make dua qunut in Fajr. Right? They make dua qunut every Fajr. It is within the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. No. But when they travel and go to territories, this particular imam, he did not. So all the students came to him and says, yeah, Imam, did you change your view? He says, no. Out of respect for the Imam Abu Hanifa, I'm in his territory. I just do that. So you could imagine if scholars able to make amends and tolerate each other, our knowledge is just a speck and we argue like crazy. Right? We argue like crazy. We feel that everything is logical. It has to be logical. If it is not logical, then it is incorrect. And that is why Ali bin Abi Talib, radiallahu anh, he says that if Islam was based on logic, when we make masah, we would have wipe under the feet instead of the top of the feet. Right? When you make masah, how do you make masah? If you wear a socks and you make wudu, how do you make masah?
From the top.
You wipe, you wet your hand, you shake the water out, and you wipe on top. He said that Islam was based on logic, you would have wipe at the bottom. So not everything is logical in Islam. We follow the sunnah of Rasulullah alayhi salam. Right? When you pass wind, you make wudu, right? Isn't that so? When you pass wind, you make wudu. You don't wash your private. That's what the sunnah is. So it may not be logical to some people, because not everything is based on logics in Islam. Right? We just follow Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam out of our love. And we know that he's guided by Allah. He does not speak of his own, because everything that he does and say is inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we could rest assured about that. So it said that once Imam Malik, he entered the masjid of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam at the time of Salatul Asr, right? And he went and he sat down towards the front of the masjid. As soon as he entered, he sat down in front of the masjid. And this is in the masjid of the Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam. And we know that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he commanded that anyone who enters the masjid should make what? A tahiyatul masjid. 2 rak'ah as greetings to the masjid. Okay? So you will find that there are some differences, like for example, there were narrations that people came in during the khutbah, and the Prophet would stop the khutbah and ask the person to make 2 rak'ah. But there are certain schools that says, no, you shouldn't. You should not be arguing about that, right? But there are narrations where the Prophet ﷺ stopped the khutbah and he commanded the person, get up and make 2 rak'ah. So Imam Malik went and he sat down, rahimullah. A young boy saw him. He didn't know it was Imam Malik, and he went and he scolded him. A young kid. He said, didn't you know that the Prophet ﷺ said that you should make 2 rak'ah when you enter the masjid? Imam Malik dutifully got up and he made 2 rak'ah. He was a scholar, big scholar of Medina. He made 2 rak'ah. And so Imam Malik is of the view that if there is no prayer after Asr in the masjid, like if you go after, because there are certain narrations and his interpretation that you should not, after us, between Asr and Maghrib, there is, you should not be making 2 rak'ah. So when he finished making the 2 rak'ah, all his students came to him and says, yeah, Imam, what's going on? You teaching us that there should be no salah, right? During this time, there should not be salah during this time, but you actually make 2 rak'ah. Did you change your view? He says, no, I did not change my view. They said, why did you pray then? He says, when I was told by this young kid to pray, I remember this ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ أَرْكَوْا لَا يَرْكَعُونَ, that when you're commanded to bow, bow. Just think about his interpretation. That's like crazy thinking ahead, right? Okay, the ayah in the Quran that when you are commanded to bow, you should bow. He said, I did this because this kid come and tell me why I'm sitting down. And I understand in this interpretation, this is how I interpret it, that if someone asks you to bow, when you are commanded to bow, you bow. And he said, on that basis, I got up and make 2 rak'ah. who would have think that way? We would have think, okay, on a flat surface, then there is no salah during this time, khalas. But his interpretation and his ilm and aql give him that understanding beyond his view, right? Beyond his view. And so you find that these are situations that exist in many different ways. There are a few other examples. For example, of course, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us with differences, right? We are created, we would never agree on everything 100%. Right? So never think that somebody will agree with you 100%. It is within our DNA to differ. We differ. We differ with each other. But these differences should not create what we may disagree. All right? But we should not be disagreeable. Not because this brother does something like this, he's following this imam, and so, but the thing is that we have to understand that all of this embraces the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we should not be ridiculing. And you will find in a growing community, a diverse community, this will be issues that will be coming up. And how you deal with it, and how you've been able to settle these matters, talks about your intelligence of how you deal with it. You see, the point is, how would I put this? Like, there is a difference, like of hikmah. There is hikmah, and scholars say hikmah is what? Sunnah. There is hikmah ilmiyah, and there is hikmah amaliyah. A person can be a scholar and he book smart, but he lacks the hikmah of action. And that is why now you find that many universities, they're not only teaching people, sciences of Islam, but now they are teaching them how to apply these sciences when you go back to the society. Because remember, you go to universities, you learn Nahu, you learn Arabic language. When you go back to your locality, what you teaching? Alif, Ba, Ta, Tha, Jim. From there to there. You would not coming back hoping that everybody going to respect you and say, hey, this is a big scholar, we're going to just run behind him. No, it would not work like that. So there is hikmah ilmiyah, hikmah of knowledge, and hikmah amaliyah. How you apply that knowledge. And you will find that a lot of people, the application of knowledge is not there. They have the knowledge, but the application is not there, and it creates a big problem in community and society. And that is why when we look in the Quran, أَدْعُوا إِلَى سَبِيلِ رَبِّكَ بِالْحِكْمَةِ بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ. Invite people with hikmah, with wisdom, and good exhortation. Okay, you can have the knowledge, but how we deal with people. Like for example, there might be a situation, a person, I have seen in Salah, people say, Assalamu alaikum, wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum. A brother stretch his hand to shake his brother's hand on the right and the left. Some of us do it as if it becomes really part of Salah now. So some people feel that, okay, why are you doing that? I saw one case, a brother, he hit the brother's hand. He said, why are you doing that? How the Prophet would have reacted to such situation. Their way of teaching people. We cannot be this, callous in our thinking. This would not help relationship. We will hurt each other. Right? It's like it's like you're taking the Quran and you're beating somebody with it. The Quran is as a book from Allah. The Hadith is the Sunnah of Rasulullah. But you're taking it, instead of selling it to the person, you're taking it and beating it into the person. They would rebel. It would not work. So there are ways and methodology of how you deal with the psychology of getting people to do things. And sometimes when you get things to be done, when it was not done in the past, people wonder how you can able to get it done. It's just because of the methodology, the choice of words, right? There are certain things you communicate the same thing but in different words, which makes a difference, right? And so you will find that there are so many examples that we have that the Prophet ﷺ, he advises. And so hikmah is something that is very, very important that we should be able to understand in this process. So these differences, one, whenever we do it, is with sincerity, right? We do it with sincerity. Sometimes, a lot of us, we have the habit of, we come to the masjid, we see something, the next thing we do is we just go and Google it, right? Google becomes a big sheikh. And then we do not know how to interpret it, and we come back with that interpretation to the masjid because everybody puts something out there, right? And Google will give you an opinion, but is it the correct opinion? But we hold on to it and we says, okay, this is the case. All right? And so it is very important. So it's based on sincerity. Whenever you're having these discussions, it's based on sincerity. How sincerely you are to communicate this position to the brother or sister. Right? And number two is you do it with kindness and gentleness. Why is it that when Musa alayhi salam and Harun was going to Pharaoh, Allah commanded them to speak gentle and soft with Pharaoh. Imagine Pharaoh, the worst man on the planet. Allah says, speak to him with gentleness and softness in order that he may take heed. Don't you know Allah already know that Pharaoh will be destined for the fire? Yes. But he was teaching Musa and Harun alayhimus salam how to deal with from a human perspective. So there was a particular time one of this companion came and he was speaking to one of the Khalifa. Very harsh. And the Khalifa says, am I worse than Pharaoh? Why do you speak to me like that? Am I worse than Pharaoh? And Allah commanded Harun and Musa alayhi salam to speak soft and gentle with Pharaoh. I'm your Khalifa. I'm not ma'soom. I will make mistakes. But you don't speak to each other like that. Al-Muslim, akhul Muslim. A Muslim is a brother to another. Right? His blood, his honor, and his wealth and family is an honor for each other. We respect that. We respect everybody's space. And so these interpretations is so important for us to able to understand that we need to speak kindly, we need to speak sincerely, we need to speak very gentle with each other. And it's not matter who wins. Right? Because this is always in our head, in our discussion. Who will be the winner in this discussion? Do you really want to be the winner? No. You want to be the person who is sincerely giving a nasiha. Right? And so this is Islamic work and Islamic methodology and da'wah. It is so important. There is a whole science of da'wah, how you deal with people. Right? And the psychology of dealing with people. And speak respectful to each other. And respect each other's opinion. As long that opinion is within the parameters of Islam and the sunnah of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are, I really thought of raising these issues because I feel as a growing community, you will see a lot of this. Right? If you have not seen it yet. Right, somebody will say, well, this is a view here. What do you think? But then you would have to be able to come to an amicable understanding that, okay, this is what we're going to do because all of it embraces the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It's not like fighting against each other. Okay, we must be able to embrace this position with each other.
Accepting each other.
Accepting each other for what they are, as long they are not out of Islam. All right? And so you'll find that these are all that whenever Muslims argue, we argue for everything, right? We argue for everything. And every time we argue, we want to be the winner. You know?
It's a fight.
You want to be the winner. And we argue on things that are very futile. And so this is something that we got to be careful in a budding community of how we're able to enhance this relationship and respect and love each other, right? And so the brotherhood of Islam, it's much more what you call sacred than all of these arguments that we're having, right? To protect this brother, the Prophet ﷺ used to go to an extent, to the greatest extent to protect the brotherhood, right? Because brotherhood is based on Iman. Al-Mukmin lil-Mukmin kal-Bunyan. Yashuddu ba'dahu ba'da. A believer to a next believer is like bunyan. Bunyan is a structure. You can't have this ceiling here without a foundation. You remove the foundation, this fall. And that's what brotherhood is. It's the foundation of a society and relationship. Al-Mukmin lil-Mukmin kal-Bunyan. Yashuddu ba'dahu ba'da. And the narrator put his hands like this. وَشَبَّكَ بَيْنَ أَصَابِعِ. You see how your fingers are closely knitted? That's how brotherhood is. You don't allow anything to destroy your brotherhood. And this is the reason why anybody come to talk to you about your brother, you make how many excuses? How many excuses are you supposed to make for your brother?
72.
What happens? As soon as somebody come and tell us about a brother, yeah, man, I thought so myself. He's like that. Instead of making excuses, we just go with him. Don't do that. It will destroy you. Any community that's now budding and you allow shaitan going to be very busy. Be aware of this. Shaitan don't like what you are doing here. Shaitan never love when Muslims come together and relationship is tight. Shaitan will always come to waswas, to whisper. Never suspect your brother. Always have husnul dhan of your brother. Have a good opinion of him unless he prove himself otherwise. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Right? We all would make mistakes. We would all messed up. But guess what? We are human and it will happen. And even among the scholars, they understand this differences, how they protect and respect each other's opinion on issues. You know, and so you will find that as a community and as a community growing, that we should not allow any of these futile discussions to break us up and into fragments and just split us apart and each one of us go our own way. We have differences, but let's sit down and talk about it and come to an amicable understanding. This is Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because whenever he sees something, you know what he does? He jump on the member and he address it right away. Okay? He go on the member and he addresses it right away. Especially when it's about brotherhood. You don't mess around with brotherhood. Seriously. You don't mess with that. And the Sahaba, they knew this. The first generation, they knew this. And that is why they said, never ever after that first generation of people, you never had so many people at one time with that kind of thinking. You may have one or two, you know, one here, one down there, but never such a large group of people with the same understanding that drank from the pure spring of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It never happened after that. And so we have to be careful, inshallah. We do everything possible to protect ourselves, to protect our brotherhood. Know that shaitan is going to be busy. Right? Shaitan will be busy to create fragmentation between us. And whenever this happens, address it right away. Don't allow suspicion to get in between. Okay? This is in Surah Hujurat, as a whole big tafsir of that. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلَحُوا بَيْنَ أَخْوَيْكُمْ. Right? Brotherhood. Big deal, man. Big deal. So don't mess it up, brothers. May Allah protect us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us among those who will do the right thing to protect our community. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.